I would like to introduce a few people who are joining us here today. First of all, Dr. Valerie Henning-Piedmont, our superintendent. Our assistant superintendent, Ms. Michelle Gosh. Our assistant superintendent of finance and operations, Mr. Victor Carlson. I saw him here today. From our Board of Education, Sonia Masika is here today joining us. And here's where I didn't get RSVPs from everybody, so if I haven't included you, I apologize. So if I don't, you could introduce yourself. We have Jack Duncan, the town historian. Our PTA president, Ms. Anne-Marie Kowaleski, is here. And our vice president, Ms. Jane Caruth, is also here. We have Lynn Eckert, the Town of Southeast board member. Ms. Jen Cassidy, a parent who helped bring this event about for us here today. Thank you for doing that. She's also on the board of the Southeast Museum, which is why she noticed that this needed to happen. So this is a good thing. And the Wells family, Henry and Cornelia, and their daughter Jalone. And Emily, sorry. Dick and Olivia Story and their daughter Emily. Olivia is formerly Olivia Wells. Okay. Don Smith, the Putnam County Sheriff, who is here representing Senator Murphy. And we have a lot of our Wells students here today, so thank you for being here. Is there anybody that I failed to mention? Well, thank you all for being here. You did a pretty good job. So I'd like to introduce my assistant principal, Ms. Christian De Jesus. Christian has only been part of the Wells family for a half a year now or so, but she jumped in with both feet. She came from New York City schools where she was an athletic director, and she just really hit the ground running, and she's done a fantastic job. And it was her that sort of initiated this whole thing. And sort of brought us here today, and she's been doing all the legwork to get us here. So thank you all for coming, and she's going to introduce some more special guests.
Thank you all for being here. This is quite the turnout. It's, totally exceeded what we expected here, which is such a great thing to see this morning. I'd like to welcome you all here today. This project started back in March, so to see, for this day to finally be here is so exciting. And it was a true collaborative effort. And it took, it started with our parents in the community. I'd like to acknowledge Ms. Anne-Marie Kowaleski and Ms. Jen Cassidy, who approached me back in March and said, we need something a little bit more, aesthetically and visually presenting, to give honor to the Wells family and Henry Wells, and educate our parents and community members, or anyone who sets foot, who may not know why our school is named Henry H. Wells, to really let that be the first thing that they see upon entering the building. We decided to take it further. We met with the Putnam Historian's Office and the director of Southeast Museum, and that, I see Amy is here, Amy Campanaro, right over here is our director of Southeast Museum, who also collaborated with Ms. Doris Tomaselli, who's an independent graphic artist, to bring this panel to full fruition. So I want to thank both of them for being here today. I'm going to invite, the panel's right here, sorry that I didn't have a black sheet. But I would like to invite Mr. Wells and Ms. Olivia to come on up. We're going to actually reveal the panel first, and then we're going to have Miss Amy Campanaro speak a little bit more about this whole project and how it came to full fruition. So you guys are going to have the honor to what are you doing?
We have to peel it away.
We're peeling it away? Peeling it away. Yep, uncovering it. Here we go. Okay.
And thank you all for doing this. We totally appreciate it. We're so thrilled. I almost feel like crying.
Just peel it away.
Yep, you're going to peel it away.
Yay. can't thank you enough. It's really beautiful.
Now, I'd like you to take a look directly across the way. Those framed newspaper articles right there that are on the brick wall, those were our original pieces. And we're going to preserve them, of course. But a lot of that is what Amy took to recreate this panel and preserve the original, newspaper articles we had framed. I'm going to turn it over. To Ms. Campanaro, and I'd like to invite you up here to talk a little bit more about all your work.
I want to stand in front of it. It's much better looking than I am. I'd like to thank Doris, the graphic designer. She gave us many, versions and panels to choose from. So thank you for our constant, well, what about this and what about that, and including everything in our vision. And of course, Jen Cassie of the Southeast Museum, but also she works at Putnam County Historian's Office. So she kind of came to me with Anne Marie and said, can we do something, project? Those are the newspaper articles from 1976 on the wall. Can we maybe jazz it up a little bit, make it a little more pleasing for the eye, but also for people who are in wheelchairs, easier to read, low vision problems and all that, and make it, ADA compliant. So that's what we did. So thank you for all of that work. And it is graffiti-proof, too, which is nice. And so as each student walks by with a pencil or anything, or, it just wipes right off, which is nice to know. So it's a wonderful panel. But as we were doing research on Henry Wells, I thought, well, I know who Henry Wells is. Well, why wouldn't I? I work at the museum, and then doing a little more research, and I just start to Google, Henry Wells. And the only thing that I could find, unless if you put Civil War or Spanish-American War, maybe you just put Henry Wells Brewster would come up with a school. It was the Henry Wells Middle School, and that's all that you could find. Nothing about the man but the school. Now, I never knew, Mr. Wells personally. I don't know if he would be offended by that there's such a large place that educates so many people is what people refer to him as, but he was much more than that. And why is this school named after him? That's what kind of we were trying to digging at and trying to put it in a 24 by 24 panel and include as much as we could. But there's so much more that we could have. So I'm so fortunate there's a handout that you have that Jen Cassie provided that has more information. And hopefully we can work some things, maybe later on to a curriculum to give to teachers to learn a little more. So Henry Wells was born in 1877. He lived 101 years. So if you just think, what has happened over the last 101 years? You can think about that. I'll quiz you later. But you have to think, automobiles, airplanes, Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, other conflicts around the world. Just telegraph, typewriter, electric typewriter, computer. Just think about our society and how it has changed in his lifespan, 101 years and everything, and to be able to adapt and move forward and be a successful person all his life and not have any of these modern technologies kind of throw anything at you. So that's just another thing, just to think over 101 years of what, when you leave today, just think, oh wow, that's another thing, Oh, the vacuum, oh, that's another one, hand pump vacuum, oh, electric wash machine, all those wonderful things, electricity and wide use. I can go on, telephone, right? So Henry Wells grew up in Brewster. He attended Brewster schools. He was an honor student in Brewster schools. He attended Yale University. He left his studies early to fight in the Spanish-American War of 1898. Upon completion of his service, he went back to Yale, finished his studies there, then went on to get a law degree in New York City, in New York law, got his law degree, practiced in White Plains for a little bit, and then came back up home to Brewster, where he later became mayor of the village of Brewster for 12 years. He was the mayor of the village of Brewster. He was on the school board. He was a school board member. He was the president of the First National Bank, and we have right here. And for those of you who don't know, the First National Bank is now 1 Main Street. It is where the town hall is. The building department and the recreation department is there. So that was the bank. He was the president of that bank. He was the founding member of the Southeast Museum. He gave, time and money to the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, to the Salvation Army. Just a very, very civically minded person. Things that we think about, he donated property, him and his family, for Wells Park, which is in the village, and money to expand Garden Street School campus, gave funding for that as well. And on a more kind of personal level, which I think anyone who was born and raised in Brewster and has lived enough years who remember him as the man with the flag, the man who used to lead all our Memorial Day parades, marching down Main Street carrying the flag. He originally used to go on horseback with his father, Frank Wells, and lead all our parades, but he was always, and you can see kind of the background here, which is this oil painting blown up. That's who we always thought he was. He was the service select chairman for our military guys for 25 years. He would, especially during the Korean War, he would see off new military recruits at the train station, give them a lovely send-off as they were going to boot camp. And then not only did he do that, but his service wasn't done there. He kept all the Brewster boys kind of in touch with each other. He would write and say, Joe Schmo's over here, this is where this guy is, you know, he's stationed over here overseas, now you can communicate, you can know where they are. So he kept everybody, our community, even though it was abroad fighting, he kept them all together. There was a very nice sense of place he created for those soldiers who were going off. So he did that as well. And of course, the school was named after him. This was the high school, this was named after him shortly in the 1970s, I believe 71, it was named after him. But you have to think, oh, here's a man who leaves his studies at Yale University. He didn't have to. But why did he do this? His father, Frank Wells, was a major in the Civil War, so he has this kind of this military sense of duty ingrained in who he is. His mother's relatives go back to the Revolutionary War. There was Abner Crosby, who fought for our side during the American Revolution, and so he has this kind of in him, a very sense of duty and a sense to community. And he lived his 101 years with that, a sense of country and a sense of community. And that's who he really was. And it's nice that everyone in the school, you know, assistant principal and everyone here in the school was willing to have the historian's office, the PTA, the museum come in and say, this is what we want to do. Is it okay if we put a little more focus on the man who the school is named after? I know so many people think it was H.H. Wells or who's this, but now it's Henry H. Wells. And now we know a little more about him, and hopefully when visitors come to the school, they can say, oh, this is who he is, and have a little more, like I said, sense of place and connection to our community. And that's who he really was. So thank you for sharing your grandfather with us. I appreciate it. And thank you to everyone for all your we do have Assembly Member Burns here as well, so I know that there might be some proclamations.
Yes, there's a proclamation.
So I will hand it over to our principal.
Yeah, you are.
I'm sorry I'm especially late. This is just...
You want to introduce yourself, Jim?
Sure. So I'm our newly elected Assemblyman representing 94th Assembly District, which is most of Putnam County and a section of northern Westchester, and it's always an honor and privilege to be here. Sorry I was a little late coming in, just going from one point to the other, but I do have a citation just to help commemorate the event. I'm glad I was able to make that little presentation, to listen to all that, because I knew a little bit about the man, but not nearly enough. And I think it's always nice. I always appreciate history and ties to our history. It helps keep the community strong, and it's important to remember our traditions and what makes us such a strong and important community. So thank you for doing this. And this is, again, for the school, just to help commemorate this event. And congratulations. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Sheriff Byrne would like to say a few things.
Thank you again for being here. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Special thank you to the family. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you so much.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that today I'm accompanied by Sergeant Michael Zabo from the Putnam County Sheriff's Office. And Sergeant Zabo is in his new position now as the head of community services. So he will be supervising all of the school resource officers, to include the 3 that will be here in the Brewster Central School District. So Michael, we're very proud of you, and he is a spark plug, believe me. Kevin Cargane did a great job. We thank Kevin for everything that he did, and Michael, we're looking forward to everything that you're going to do. And if I might just take a moment to provide some information that Eric Gross informed me of. When I think of school resource officers and what they do, a former superintendent of schools, Mark Lewis, used to say, my school resource officers are like my American Express card. I never want to be without them, don't be home without them. Well, I was informed this morning that former superintendent of schools, Mark Lewis, lost his battle with prostate cancer and passed on this morning. So if I could just call for a moment of silence in his memory, because we all worked with him for so many years. It's a real honor to be asked to represent Senator Murphy here today, and I might add also, I thought Mary Ellen Odell was going to make it, but she probably got tied up with something, our county executive, Mary Ellen Odell. And I just want you to know that both of them truly support our schools in Putnam County and realize how important the schools are to the very fabric of everything that happens in Putnam County. You know, Putnam County is the lowest crime rate county in the state of New York, and it doesn't happen just, Michael would agree with me on this, it's not just the police, it's not just the firefighters and the ambulance corps, it's every part of our county, and the schools and how we raise our children play such an important role. So this was a very important event for Senator Murphy, and I know for also Assemblyman Byrne. So he wanted to present a proclamation, and that proclamation arrived just a couple of minutes before the ceremony started. That was so important for him to have it here. I want to read the proclamation because it's not a long proclamation, but it says a lot of great things about Henry Wells, the man. Honoring Henry Wells, proclamation. Whereas the state of New York is proud to acknowledge its esteemed citizens who have distinguished themselves in their community, and whereas Henry H. Wells was born in 1876, was a prominent Brewster resident, and whereas Henry H. Wells was renowned for his extraordinary patriotism and dedication to education, and whereas Henry Wells was the son of a Civil War veteran, and he himself was a veteran of the Spanish-American War, and whereas Henry H. Wells serves the community as a Board of Education trustee, as mayor of Brewster, and as parade grand marshal, and whereas Henry H. Wells generously donated land for an expansion of Garden Street School, and whereas in 1971 the Brewster Central School District named its middle school in his honor, and whereas in order to educate students and their families about who Henry H. Wells was, the district collaborated with the Brewster ISMSPTA, the Southeast Museum, and the Putnam County Historian's Office to create an educational exhibit panel. And whereas the panel is being rededicated on August 22nd, 2017, and whereas Henry H. Wells was a wonderful role model, and his legacy continues to inspire others, now therefore be resolved that I, as a duly elected member of the Senate of the state of New York, on behalf of the citizens thereof, do hereby honor the late Henry H. Wells. Signed, Dr. Terrence Murphy, New York State Senator, 40th Senate District. So I think this is a nice Let me just close by saying a couple people asked me here today during the little gathering before the ceremony, had I ever met Henry Wells, and having been born in 1947, I grew up in this great county, and I can remember Henry Wells and all his activities and many of the things he did in my lifetime, his work with veterans. And I told someone, I know I told Eric Gross, I don't think I ever remembered Henry Wells without the flag. I have no images of him without a flag. And then when you unveil this, the man with the flag. The history in this booklet is incredible. And it just reminds me, last summer, the American Security Council Foundation, being concerned about patriotism and Americanism, and losing the passing on to our young people, the values of our Declaration of Independence, our founding document, the values of our Constitution, our governing document. We rolled out a program, a national program in Putnam County called Step Up America, where we would remind people and young people about the importance of these values, these American values. And as I was reading this booklet, and as I saw that poster being unveiled, we were not the first to do that. Henry Wells was doing that throughout his lifetime in Brewster, in Putnam County. He is truly an icon in Putnam County. And I will tell you, the people in Putnam County, everyone who attends this school is honored to attend a school named in this great man's memory. So it's an honor here today on behalf of Senator Murphy to present this proclamation to the Brewster Central School District, and I want the Wells family in here as well.
That's really beautiful.
And I personally want to thank Senator Murphy and Assemblyman Kevin Byrne, for everything they do to help honor Henry Wells. So thank you so much, and it's an honor to be a part of this ceremony.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Can you do it?
Jump in, Amy.
Michael, you want to come up here?
Yeah, wide angle lens.
Can we get Michael? Michael does a lot of the work. I want to.
Working your way around. You want that panoramic?
Thank you so much. Oh, yes, please.
This is Henry Wells' great-great-grandchildren.
We can't do this without.
These are the great-grandchildren.
The next generation.
And this is what he was about. He was about passing on these values to future generations. Please, anybody that we should have in this picture?
It's so quiet in this school. I've never heard it this quiet.
Thank you so much again. We totally appreciate it.
And I note that Henry Wells was a graduate of Yale, and I'm very grateful to not only Yale, but to Yale New Haven.
Thank you. So thank you, everybody, again for joining us this morning. That concludes the official part of the ceremony. You're all welcome to stay. We have some coffee and some juice over here, some bagels, and you're welcome to stay as long as you like. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you to our secretaries here, Peggy, Monica, Tina, who worked hard to put all of this together, the coffee, the bagels, even the invites. I mean, they worked so hard. Thank you.
Great.